We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you to our Split Zone Duo audience. It's the Split Zone Duo Extra Points Sports Business Hour, one of my favorite recurring features around this program. I'm Alex Kirshner with Richard Johnson and Extra Points publisher and proprietor of the Extra Points College Sports Document Library, Matt Brown. Matt, getting ready to go to Vegas to cover some college sports business, I understand?
I am. We're recording this on a Thursday, and in a couple of days, I will be at NACDA, or Athletic Director Palooza, as we call it here at Extra Points. It's the biggest conference every year where ADs and sport administrators and vendors across all levels of college sports congregate for 3 days to gamble, get drunk, sell each other stuff, and talk about the future of college athletics. So I will be there.
Boring.
I think I might be there's only going to be 2 reporters there. I think it's going to be me and SBJ. So I recognize that this isn't for everybody, but it is important for me.
Tell Ben I said hi.
I will.
Matt, at this Athletic Director Palooza, I have a question. Do you expect that you'll hear anything about the rapidly changing landscape of college athletics?
Alex, it's the wild, wild west out there. And
guys, it's unsustainable.
It's unsustainable. This industry needs guardrails.
I tell you what,
else we're going to start losing some opportunity. Okay, I can't even fucking do it, man. I'm literally getting hives like saying these things out loud. We're obviously going to get into this a little later, but I did not watch the congressional hearing, the most recent congressional hearing. I would rather watch paint dry, and I do this for a living, and it's just like you can literally copy and paste what everybody's going to say, all parties involved are going to say at every one of these things. And look, I understand that Senate hearings are often baby's first insert any issue, but still, it's just good Lord.
Yeah. Senate hearings are interesting because they're kind of just theater, but they're designed to drum up political support for things. And then occasionally you get someone who kind of embarrasses themselves in a Senate hearing. And because politics is TV now, that person will then have to resign from their job or get fired, as happened to Kristi Noem a couple weeks ago.
I was going to say, besides the Kristi Noem thing, we live in a post-shame society, so it doesn't really work anymore.
Yeah, we pretty much do. Matt, I was at a wedding this past weekend, and I met someone who works for the Teamsters who said he was going to Vegas for 11 days for a convention. I was like, brother.
Nobody has successfully been in Vegas for 11 consecutive days unless they were either A, depicted in either Casino or Godfather 2, or one of the original Mormon settlers. Everybody else, when you're there for more than 10 days, begins to experience negative side effects. I can't handle more than 3. We were just saying beforehand for the show, I've never done Vegas for fun. I think it would be nice. Maybe Taylor and I could go drop the kids off at the grandparents, catch a show, have 48 hours. After 3 days where I don't go outside and just going between conference centers and casinos and hotels and everything, it feels surreal. I couldn't imagine 11 days.
Yeah, I also couldn't fathom 11 days. I could maybe fathom 11 days over the course of 11 trips.
Sure. Plus, you're with Teamsters. You have to drink like a Teamster. You have to like that. Yeah. I am not at that level. I don't think I will ever get that level because I started so late. I don't think I'll ever have that level of alcohol tolerance.
Matt, one thing you will unquestionably hear about as we get into the meat and potatoes of this sports business hour is the Protect College Sports Act of 2026. Richard just said it. He didn't even watch the hearing the other day. We have a stated policy on this show of not putting you through every development that goes on between Congress and college sports because it's been going on for 7 years. And you may notice that the sum total of what has happened is nil, whatever.
But that's why we have the Sports Business Hour with Matt Brown, purveyor by Extra Points newsletter.
Because I'm going to be honest with you, I have not watched all of them ever. I have watched more of them than the Surgeon General recommends, and for good reason. I will say though, this particular act is different, right? Like I was beginning to check out a lot of the score conversations because you didn't need to be Encyclopedia Brown to know that score was going to be dead in the water when it came into the Senate anyway. Even the bill's sponsors were saying that, and then it was killed for a lot of reasons, many of which had nothing to do with college sports at all. This is the Protect College Sports Act is one that I do not believe this second has 60 votes, but it is closer than anything else that has happened. And it is the first bill, I think, ever in the college, since we've been talking about college sports reform in Congress, that has a meaningful number of both Democratic and Republican supporters. A comment.
I was going to say, Matt, I'm pretty sure that Protect College Sports has came out or became a thing since the last time we've talked to you. I don't think, I think in that time span they've done it.
Correct.
And we've been talking about it for a year. If I had $1 for every time one of Ted Cruz's people said it's coming next month, I'd have $7, which isn't a lot, but it's weird.
It's more than zero.
It's more than zero.
And it does strike me as if there is going to be the fanciful, fateful congressional intervention, it would look basically like this, which is to say, it's basically a mashup of what different sides and chambers have been talking about in different ways. Now, that does not mean it is going to pass.
Or that it is good, just that it exists.
Right. Just the form in which it exists, Alex.
Yeah.
It feels very Ted Kennedy, Senate is the world's greatest deliberative body aura. Doesn't mean it will aura in the United States Senate. Unbelievable term. I was just watching Love Story, so the Kennedys are on my mind. It's decent. I think it was really bad, dude. It was not, I have nothing to say for myself. And I can't blame my wife either. It was me, the instigator. It was not good. The thing about this, though, is that it does represent, Matt, I think, a seriousness of effort, which, as Richard says, isn't me saying it's good or that I'd vote for it. I think I probably wouldn't without a few changes. But it is, I'm glad to hear you say, because it confirms my priors and it means that this segment is not a waste, more serious than anything else that's come across the congressional register or whatnot over the last 6-7 years of the NCAA pushing for this kind of thing.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think we've talked about this on the air before, and if not, certainly off the air. I think I share both of your opinions about Ted Cruz as a legislator and Ted Cruz probably as a human being, but I would not call Ted Cruz stupid. And the people that work for Ted Cruz, there are lots of other adjectives we could use. I wouldn't call them dumb either. And what I have taken away from talking to many of the people that have been involved with drafting this bill from Republican committees and Democratic lawmakers is that people spent actual intellectual energy and time and effort to try and craft this, which unfortunately all three of us know is not the case for lots of other kinds of legislation. Sometimes people just be saying stuff or just copying and pasting what a lobbyist told them, or they're kind of airmailing it. This was not airmailed. It has some meaningful problems both politically and policy wise, but this was a meaningful effort.
Let me do some quick highlights. Matt, you let me know what you think I'm missing, 'cause it's a pretty long bill. Just some things in case your eyes are still glazed over and you have not dove into this just yet. NIL deal disclosures, quote unquote, NIL deal disclosures will sort of be treated like the House settlement. They need to have a valid business purpose. North of $600, they need to be reported. They'll be checked out in a way that would now have the force of law and not just be part of a settlement that is sort of treated as the law of college sports. There would be antitrust protection, an exemption, if you will, for the NCAA conferences to enforce a spending cap that was sort of laid out first under the House settlement. There is a state law preemption, which they've asked for. So you have no more wild, wild west, or maybe you still do, but you would have a national standard. You would have a national standard. You would no longer have, a patchwork of state legislation. One free transfer.
It would be Tombstone. It wouldn't be the complete Wild West. There would be a sheriff, but
yes.
There would still be gunfire.
One free transfer. Second time you have to sit out unless you have graduated, or something like a sport cut, a head coach departure, a sexual misconduct matter, something to that effect. 5 years to play 5, certain exceptions, missions, military, pregnancy. The Lane Kiffin Rule, which I think is probably slopulism, but we will get to that one. Agent fee caps, about 5%. D1 players getting medical coverage during play and for a handful of years after play, coverage for sports-related injuries, a $60 million annual medical fund, 1/3 athlete representation on various NCAA boards that make decisions. I think that's interesting. Seems like kind of a half measure, but interesting. And then there's, Matt, I think you get into the kind of controversial stuff that might, or other controversial stuff that might be a problem.
I was going to say.
You have a quote unquote voluntary pooled media rights entity with protection under the Sports Broadcasting Act, but seems like the Big Ten and the SEC sure think that this is not necessarily so voluntary and could be a thing that would rope them in. So they're not happy about that. And then there is a local free viewing option requirement for football and basketball. There is a poison pill that would be designed to stop the Big Ten and the SEC from expanding further. And also head coaches would now be violating federal law if they overrode medical staff decisions, which that seems fine. Seems like that should already be probably a violation of some law if they were doing that. Matt, did I miss anything in there that you think is really important to make people aware of off the jump about this pretty long bill?
I think that's the biggest stuff. There's some data disclosure updates. There's a private law. I'm going to butcher the term here. Right to private action, I think, or it makes it easier for athletes or individuals to sue the NCAA or schools if they are violating this agreement, which will mean more litigation, but also it's a significant pro-labor thing. The last thing I think that's really important to note, besides all the fuck the Big Ten and SEC specifically stuff, is this bill doesn't say anything about employment. In fact, specifically says nothing in this bill should be taken to mean or not mean athlete employment status. There's a bunch of other things that certainly smell like employment and employment regulations that are involved in this bill, but it is attempting to be neutral, and that is the red line that one of the big red lines that sunk score. And if that red line is altered or changed during markup, it will mean that this bill cannot pass because there are not enough Democratic votes to support anything that would completely preclude the ability or prevent the ability from some athletes becoming employees.
Matt, let's talk about why this won't pass on both Democratic and Republican grounds, because that's the high wire act that the authors of the bill, Ted Cruz and Maria Cantwell from Washington State, who's a Democrat, are trying to walk. What's going to make Democrats upset here? I'll start. It's a win for Trump if it passes, and you can whine about this being a Democratic consideration, but Republicans do it too. They did it with immigration reform in the run-up to the 2024 election. It's how professional politics works. If this is Trump getting credit for saving college sports and injecting himself really into the process, going to make it harder for some Democrats to support this, I would think.
Unquestionably, especially the timing, right? Because if this actually gets signed, it's going to happen either right before the August recess or right after. You don't want Trump taking a victory lap over what would actually be his most significant bipartisan legislative achievement, kind of close to midterms. Midterms that right now Democrats are projected to do very well, and you would not want to give the president momentum. There's some policy reasons why some Democrats are not going to want to support this either, right? This is not a bill that is especially immediately friendly to organized labor interests. And it's also one that I think you can argue is fundamentally against the economic interest of elite athletes. If you limit the number of times you can transfer to just one, you put in a hard cap from House and allow the NCAA and the CSC to actually punish people that are, money laundering cap spending through MMR companies or donor groups or something else. If you try to give some actual teeth to enforcing 21.3 million or whatever the number ends up being, and you extend that cap beyond the length of the House settlement, which is only supposed to be in existence, a decade? So this goes on into perpetuity. You are significantly limiting the earning potential of elite athletes. You will not have a $5 million college quarterback if the salary cap is 21 and change and there's an ability to actually punish people that break that rule. So if you are somebody like Senator Murphy from Connecticut, potentially Senator Booker, Senator Sanders, somebody who's been more emphatically on the labor and economic rights angle for college athletes, I think you will look at this and think, I can't support it. There's also the fact that the Congressional Black Caucus has come out very strongly against similar legislation in the House. And that might make it harder for either Black senators or those that care a lot about what the CBC says to vote in lockstep for this.
And just to be clear on that, Matt, they have come out against this as well.
Yes.
They have come out against both the Senate version, which this is the Senate version,
sure,
so-called, and the House version, the score, or whatever you want to call it, that has been out for a while. They have come out against both of those things. And what I think is interesting is the needle that they are threading here is going along the lines of, and this is basically what I talked about with Joel Anderson a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago, on this very feed, which is what are different ways we can try to push back on the not encroachment, frankly, basic abolition of the Voting Rights Act as we know it. Yep. Now, what I think is interesting as far as how the Congressional Black Caucus is going about its business specifically is like what happened with the Voting Rights Act and the chipping away at it was a very long-term I mean, they've been at it
since before we were born.
Right. Like they've been at this for a long time, chipping away at the Voting Rights Act in different ways. This, I don't know what the other suite of things the Congressional Black Caucus is doing to try to bite back against the abolition of the Voting Rights Act or the apparent abolition of the Voting Rights Act. I'm not saying they're not doing anything. I'm just saying I literally don't know what else they're doing. But this is just an interesting on-ramp in a way to do it, which is to go after not just sports, but college sports and the most important thing in XYZ Southern state. And so the Congressional Black Caucus being pretty quick about their refuting here. I mean, it was a matter of days with which they produced this statement, to me is really interesting. And you got a lot of Southern Congress people on both sides of the aisle, or excuse me, on both chambers, I should say, who are part of the CBC.
You do. Well, I think it is fair to say that voting in favor of the College Rights Protection Act in the U.S. Senate is going to be a tough vote for a Democrat. Even if this thing passes, the substantial majority of Democrats are going to vote against it. And that will be one of the difficult optics. They need 7. I think that is possible. I don't believe they have that now. I am going to hazard a guess that if that does happen, all of the Democrats that vote for this bill are going to be less melanated than Richard. And that's probably older than 60 as a way to kind of make this work.
Yeah, John Fetterman plus 6 more would be the path there.
I mean, you've got Cantwell, you've got Coons. This is the kind of thing that someone like Dick Durbin, who's older than dirt and is super white and is retiring and doesn't have to be accountable to voters anymore, that I could see him voting for this.
But I think it is very interesting that you will not have Cory Booker. Cory Booker's Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah.
You won't have Cory Booker.
And I don't think you're going to have any of the visible Democrats that have cared about college sports except for Senator Cantwell voting for this.
What also, Alex, you probably actually know this off the top of your head. What is the rough majority of Republicans in the Senate out of 100?
Do Republicans have 54 right now, Matt?
54.
Am I right?
So it's 54, 2 independents nominally. And then 54, 2 independents. And then what would that make? 44 Democrats?
Our listeners are falling asleep right now. There's Angus King from Maine, who isn't a Democrat. There is. There's John Fetterman from Pennsylvania,
Whip
who
the votes, baby.
Is a Democrat. You know, I was a Senate intern a couple times over. So I mean, I could get in there.
You.
I used to know all 100 senators. Actually,
Did
I don't
you
anymore.
Really?
I
Off
did
the
back
top
in college.
Of your head.
I did. I would say also, Matt, that one group of Democrats that's going to have a hard time supporting this is any Democrat that wants to be president. One of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus is Jim Clyburn from South Carolina. You want that guy to tell the people of South Carolina to vote for you in a primary? Probably shouldn't vote for this bill. Probably shouldn't use that political capital in that way. And I think that that is an important consideration as well, especially considering that the NCAA is getting in this bill like the thing it's always wanted. Like there are going to be some things that some conferences aren't going to like, but they got the thing that says we get to dictate the terms of athlete compensation without athletes being employees or in a union.
Yeah,
and the employee question is left open, but that's the effect. And so it is in that way, a lot of Democrats are going to see this understandably as kind of a joke that they just can't get behind. And so you get what you get.
What makes this interesting is, this is going to be very difficult to vote for the majority of Dems. But I also don't think it's a guarantee you're going to get every Republican either. And the math that we're kind of talking about here is for whipping is assuming every single Republican votes in lockstep. We have three groups that I think are worth monitoring on the Republican side for this. One is the Rand Paul caucus, which consists of Rand Paul. Republican from Kentucky, the closest thing we have to an actual libertarian in the U.S. Senate, who has previously expressed a lot of skepticism about giving the NCAA.
I was just making hands to say that it was actually 53 Republicans right now, not 54.
Yeah, 53.
Sorry about that.
We regret the error. I have a political science degree. I'm dumb. Right. So Rand Paul has over the course of his time in office, has been willing to buck his party and the executive branch to vote out of principle, even if he's the only one doing it. He's previously expressed skepticism in empowering the NCAA with antitrust exemptions. He's actually put forth his own college sports bill that nobody else supported, both because nobody else is libertarian and Rand Paul's kind of an asshole, to signify, to show that he's not really on board with what's happening with the SCORE Act and in general. So, yeah, I could see a world where he says this is not an issue that Congress should be involved in. I dissent. And that changes the math. You also have the potential for some Republicans who are going to vote against this because it's too woke. It doesn't go far enough in either restricting athlete employment, which some U.S. House members have said should be the case,
or antagonizing trans people,
or hitting whatever other culture war. I think we saw Bernie Moreno, my evil cousin, from the Republican from Ohio, signify that like right now this is insufficiently anti-trans for them to support, even though the NCAA has already kind of followed Trump's guidance on that particular issue. So you could see
there's not enough antagonism of trans people by the levers of power right now. There has to be more.
Many people are saying this, not on this show, but many people are saying this. So that is a possibility. And then you have, if you'll excuse my language here for a minute, you have the Fuck Trump caucus, which now consists of three senators: Tom Dills, from North Carolina, the Corbett, the guy in Texas, Cornyn,
yes,
right?
A tragic story on this one.
And then Cassidy from Louisiana, and these are guys that are all retiring, that have all expressed, that are leaving office either because they've been primaried or they're being pushed out of the MAGA tent, and they've got nothing to lose, and they are mad.
Real profiles and courage there.
Real profiles and courage, right? And even if they might agree on the substance of this bill, is it possible that one or two of them says "screw you"? This is
also, and just to be clear, this isn't just three guys on a podcast saying this. This is something that I'm pretty sure a lot of people in Trump's orbit, including his own chief of staff, have said that they're worried about. The chief of staff of the White House said that Trump promised her that after the first 100 days, the score settling would be over. But now he just like, obviously, I don't even think his supporters will disagree. Trump doesn't really care about governing. Like, Trump is primarily in this to fuck with people who he thinks have wronged him. And does that make it easier to get things to 60 votes in the Senate? No. Now, does he care about that? No. And he successfully got to absolutely humiliate all of these men, which is well worth it to him.
Yeah.
But it does affect the math of this bill. It just does. And I know you might think that I'm just saying that, but it seems real to me.
Literally, right before I got on this call, I was talking to a congressional staffer who said the same thing. Now, they could all support it, but this is all to say this is the math calculus, and this is also ignoring any kind of additional lobbying the Big Ten and SEC are going to do, and lawmakers might be vulnerable to that specific kind of not wanting to make old state U mad in my particular state, or what this bill looks like after markup. Just that there is a pathway for this to get through the Senate, but it is difficult math because there are reasons in both fragile coalitions for lawmakers to say we can't do this, and you really can't afford many defections.
Matt, tell us about this media rights pooling issue and why the SEC and the Big Ten are so on edge about it. I think our listeners will be familiar with the dynamic that in general, media rights pooling is not as good for those two as it is for the other conferences. But as I understand it, they try to be a little sneaky in writing this bill about this issue. And I wonder if you could explain it.
The way I would describe this bill, I think I joked about it earlier, is there's half of this I think is pretty explicitly reflect the Big Ten and the SEC. And you can see that partly because Cody Campbell's fingerprints are on this thing. I'm not saying he wrote it. I am saying he was highly influential in it. And that's a guy whose personal interests and institutional interests are very aligned with diminishing the institutional power of those two leagues. That benefits Texas Tech. If you're a lawmaker in Washington and you're intimately familiar with what happened to Pullman and Washington State University and that local economy after getting kicked out of the earlier power structure, in part because of the Big Ten, and now you're familiar with Washington fans who make less money and have to fly to Rutgers on a Thursday night for a softball game, I understand why you'd be apprehensive or have some frustration toward these two entities. If you specifically write in something that says, like, these two can't expand. We don't want these two taking their ball and going home. We want other limitations on these two. That's born, I think, less out of high-minded civic responsibility and more out of these guys hurt my constituents. I don't want them to potentially hurt other institutions that I care about. The thing about media rights is a major source of the Big Ten and SEC's political power within college athletics comes from the fact that not just that they make a ton of money, but they make a ton of money and a ton more money than everybody else. And if you remove that and create a unified television package, even if you end up paying the Big Ten and the SEC more within that package, you are raising the floor of other people and you are diminishing the individual power that those two leagues have over everybody else. So of course they would. There's also, I think, an argument that is self-serving, but I personally think is more persuasive that the Big Ten and the SEC are offering, which is take our self-interest out of here. Combining all of these won't actually make everybody a ton more money. And the reason that combining these is attractive to people like Campbell and to other lawmakers is the thought is if you combine everything, everybody makes more television money, and we could put that new television money towards volleyball scholarships or other things, solve the revenue problem.
Quaint.
Right. But there's no requirement to use that money in any particular way. And there's no, here's what we do in case that money doesn't come. And I understand where they're coming, why lawmakers think this is going to happen, because Smash Capital is telling people that it would happen, and it's been beneficial for the professional leagues. But we're entering into a world where, when it's going to be super expensive to buy those deals out, we don't have a lot of other potential buyers for everything. And quite frankly, a lot of the bundled television rights that would get thrown in here aren't worth very much. If you add a bunch of C- properties together and make a huge pile of them, you don't suddenly get a premium property.
It's funny because baseball does seem like they're going to do this. This was announced as part of one of the owners' proposals in baseball, like the same week that this bill came down. But the operative difference there is that the baseball teams are on the regional sports network model, which is collapsing. So they sort of have to. Whereas you cannot say the same about the vast majority of the outlets that are currently broadcasting college football games. Also interesting, Matt, that the media rights pooling is written as optional, but it's not optional for everybody. It's optional as in the schools, 75% of FBS can say we're doing this or not. And you could do the napkin math, and that means you could do it without the Big Ten and the SEC, and then they would be forced to do it.
I would love to get, just as a hypothetical, I would love to hear more serious professional media analysts ballpark, like what would the media rights deal be worth if you combined everything in FBS except for the Big Ten and the SEC? Would Texas Tech get a raise? Would Florida State get a raise? I honestly
I don't need to go down the leaderboard here, but like who are you signing up for if that's the case? And that
Florida
would be,
State, Clemson, North Carolina.
No, well, you have to figure out where Notre Dame goes, but Miami, you don't get much further down than 10 or 15, which obviously is the point.
You if you do all that,
I don't even know if you get to 10. Sorry, I don't even know if you get to 10.
No, the whole argument about that is that what you're getting is tonnage. You're getting lots and lots and lots of inventory, and you're getting lots of inventory across multiple time zones. You now control a huge amount of inventory in the Mountain and Pacific time zones, which 10 years ago everybody thought was very important. Now the industry experts I talk to say it's really not so important. Like that there's not as much juice there to squeeze, and those people are watching the NBA, or they're doing other things. So I don't know. Like you're right. Like it's Miami, Florida State, Clemson football, some Carolina and some Carolina Duke basketball, Texas Tech, BYU, and then a bunch of really good games that are competitive and that no one's going to watch. And there's so much inventory, you got to bring in 4 different partners anyway. So you're kind of just doing the same thing.
And to bring this into the legislative whipping votes arena for a second, Richard, you've reported on this in the past. You've both reported on this in the past. And I think it's important that people understand this, but it's often done kind of in the back halls of the Senate office buildings rather than on the floor and in the vote count. If the SEC is mad about this, which it is, and the Big Ten is mad about this, that means that Nick Saban, when he's on Capitol Hill at a hearing, is going to go to the office of Katie Britt, who's the more serious of the 2 Alabama senators. And Nick Saban's going to tell Katie Britt this thing is bad for the Tide. And then Katie Britt's not going to vote for this. Now, is she going to not vote for it, like humiliating the party on the floor? No. But she's going to tell John Thune, the Senate Republican leader, hey, boss, we need to do this differently. And the same thing is true if Kirby Smart tells Raphael Warnock, hey, this thing's bad for the dogs.
Well, Raphael Warnock's, I don't know for sure, but probably in the Congressional Black Caucus.
Maybe I should have used John Ossoff as the example.
Yeah, better one.
I should have used that as an example. And, the Big Ten and the SEC schools are in a wide variety of different states. As much as right now Republicans like to try to humble higher education in some ways and dictate curricula and things of that nature, they still have really close relationships with the leadership of these schools and don't want to be seen, Matt, putting them out to dry. And so there's definitely enough senators in the SEC and Big Ten footprint who, when asked by the school president to please not support this, will just say, okay, I'm not doing that. And to me, that's a huge problem for this bill as currently written.
If that actually happens, and nice or not nice, I guess, depending on where you sit on this bill, you don't need to do this for everybody. If you just flip 3 Republicans in the Southeast, there's no bill, right? Like it is way more important for there to be unity among the Republicans pushing this than it is for the Democrats, knowing that you're not going to get 3/4 of the Democrats anyway. So I am not here to tell you that as of 6/4/26, this bill is happening, nor can I definitively say that it's dead. It is more alive than SCORE, more alive than what Marco Rubio or Eric Schmidt or for that matter, what Cory Booker and the Connecticut folks have proposed. All those other things are dead. This thing is alive, but it has to go through the camel through the eye of the needle here. And there's a lot of different ways where that might not work.
One other thing here that we haven't sort of talked about that I did want to bring up is the donations that Cody Campbell has made to Ted Cruz, of which our friend David at Foyaball has uncovered and published in his newsletter earlier this week. It's between him and I believe his wife, or either his wife or his PAC in some way, shape, or form. Cody Campbell and associates thereof have given over $500,000 to Ted Cruz over the years, which I don't think is terribly surprising if you know where Cody Campbell lives and where Ted Cruz is a senator, and what party Ted Cruz is a senator of. But it's just curious because this is the one. Go ahead, Alex.
I've heard some whispers from some friends in the District of Columbia that there might be some love lost between those guys, particularly with one guy thinking that the other guy might like at some point to have that guy's job in the U.S. Senate.
What would give you that? What would give you that impression?
Do you mean to tell me that there might be some ego issues involving Texas Republicans who are rich?
Surely not.
Yeah. I do think, Matt, am I wrong to be a little bit tired of this Cody Campbell guy? Spend on your football team. That's great. Great story. I'm glad you're putting your money there. But this is like a real Citizens United-ing happening in college football right now, where this guy is just trying to reshape the sport to his whims so that it can be good for Texas Tech specifically. I don't think Alex, I like this.
I think that I don't think you missed a point when you say that it's like like Trump's like magnum opus to get this over the line. I think it's Cody Campbell's magnum opus to get this thing over the line.
This over the line and Texas Tech to win a championship.
Right.
Those are the two things.
If Cody Campbell, and I actually think I don't know if they won the softball game last night. So they may be getting a softball championship by the time you listen to this, which is not the big one he's after, but it's certainly one because they paid all that money for that pitcher. But like, if Cody Campbell's able to get this over the line, that is absolutely something you stake a run for something on if you're going to run for statewide office, governor, or what have you, or if you're going to run for Senate.
A part of me looks at this with some measure of admiration because I think if I had more money than God, would I also try to single-handedly, advance one of my political pet issues that's not like life or death, but I can do that because I'm a bajillionaire? I'd be tempted to do it, right? Like, okay, we're the Matt Brown FOIA Reform Act is coming. I'm going to put TV commercials on it. Suck it, I'm rich. I have some respect for that. Like, I'm glad that Campbell's doing this instead of like why we should bomb more brown people and put it on television or something or something else that would be terrible. Even though I know who he's getting money to. On the other hand, I also share your frustrations. I understand, especially listeners to the show. Like, who is this guy? Why is he on TV all the time? Why do we all have to listen to him just because he's rich and a regent at one institution? And this is kind of a Schoolhouse Rock illuminating moment, I think, for a lot of people, because this is more visible to us as college football fans. This is how lawmaking works in general. There's just a different Cody Campbell for a lot of other different industries. And if one guy with enough money really wants something, and it's not a guarantee that it'll happen, but it is a guarantee that we have to talk about it. And that's, if you resent that, I get why would you be bored of Campbell?
The other piece of this that I wanted to quickly talk about before we move on is the so-called Lane Kiffin Rule. I bet this was fun to draft, and I appreciate the ingenuity in the spirit of it, but I think this is kind of fake populism. It's an attempt to seem like you are really with the fans of the sport because no one likes the way that Lane Kiffin went about that. But seems pretty obvious to me that the armies of lawyers who work for college sports agencies and athletic directors and search firms would be able to work around this thing like it was nothing. This is the rule that says you can't take over another program during the season. It's a cool idea, and I legitimately was probably fun to legislate this and to draft it, but I'm not really sure that the United States government is going to stop people like Lane Kiffin from chasing a bag and chasing a new job during the college football season. This has to be a calendar change and an incentives change because they're going to find ways to work around this. And I'm a guy who believes, I believe probably much more than Ted Cruz does, the government can be a real force for greatness in this world. But I just don't really know that it's going to work here.
Well, I also just think it's very easily the carrot you like bargain over. Like, that's a fairly easy thing to give if the other side wants it gone and you're trying to negotiate getting this thing over the line.
I don't even know who the other side is, though. I'm not sure that this is even a blue versus red issue. Nobody likes Lane Kiffin unless you're an LSU fan, in which case you love him.
I wasn't really talking to Lane Kiffin of it all. I'm talking about if, for instance, lobbyists or what have you are going to bring this up as something that we'd like to get out of it, is what I'm saying.
I think that's true. This is one of this could be part of the horse trading to get things over the line. I think it's good politics, because even if you like Lane Kiffin personally, it is infuriating to see a team that is actively competing for a national championship lose a coach and have this so public. I suspect, Alex, you're probably right that however this ultimately ends up being in the bill or not in the bill and signed, but there's going to be ways around it. And these conversations will continue to happen through intermediaries, but it won't be so flagrant and in your face and dominating every section of sports radio. And on some level, for a lot of different kinds of corruption, I think people would be okay with it if you just didn't rub their nose in it so much. And that was the case with what we saw with Kiffin and Ole Miss and LSU, and what we'll see whenever Lane Kiffin leaves LSU for the NFL, for Alabama, for Supreme Court seats, for a reality show. Anything is possible, and then we'll go the same thing again. I wouldn't be surprised if it stays in, honestly. But that's one of the areas where I think there could be some wiggle room.
Matt, that's the situation with the Protect College Sports Act. We're going to keep our eyes on that as it moves forward or doesn't move forward in the United States Senate.
Alex, got any road trips coming up?
Richard, I do. I actually have a plane trip coming up, and I was talking with Wes Bowling, our man at Nokian Tires, about whether Nokian could design a tire that would allow me to take the car across a large body of water that separates multiple continents. Nokian is still working on that. They do not have a drive across water tire just yet, but they do have tires that will get you anywhere that you could possibly want to go in the American roadway system. And I would very much suggest that you check those out.
One point of contention there, though, because Nokian tires, as I believe you know, are pretty good on ice, at least decent. Does that itself count as water or a body thereof, even though it is a frozen version of the medium?
Yeah. I actually don't know if Nokian has done Zamboni tires, but that would clear that up. Perhaps that's a new market for Nokian to get into if they are not there already. We want you to DM your dream road trip destinations to @NokianTiresNA on Instagram. Nokian is about to launch a campaign for road trip inspiration and tips. If you follow @NokianTiresNA on Instagram, you might get some inspiration all your own. Thank you very much to Nokian Tires for the support of this podcast. I'm going to read you a headline from a state where you have a great deal of experience. It's in the Salt Lake Tribune, and the headline is, University of Utah Athletic Department begins, quote, unsettling layoff process as part of private equity deal. This is the single school, the University of Utah, that is doing the most to actually advance this private equity future in college football that we have talked about for a couple of years now. And it doesn't necessarily seem like the early stages are going that well. What would you make of this, Matt?
I was talking to Richard about this earlier. I want to be conservative in how I get out pitchforks because there's still so much about this Utah deal that we don't actually know. We don't even have the term sheet for this whole thing. It hasn't been announced yet. I've got like a gajillion grandma requests out to the U of U that are either been rejected or delayed, and the same thing with other reporters. And my understanding, it hasn't even been signed yet. And it was supposed to have been signed and approved months ago. It probably will still happen, but there has been stronger than anticipated political pushback even within blood red Utah about this. But we don't know yet who's being laid off. We don't know exactly how many people are being laid off. We don't know the terms of the private equity and Otro capital investment package. And we don't know how many of those people are going to get their jobs back under this new unit. It's a disconcerting headline. It sucks for anybody that's worked in that department. I know people in that department, and the folks that I talk to have some concerns, and certainly a lot of concerns about how this package came together. But when the dust settles, it could be 3 jobs were lost, which is unfortunate, but probably not something I'm going to get out pitchforks for. Or it could be 70 jobs, and it could be a catastrophe. And the frustrating thing, I think, to me, is less that this is happening and more that it's June, and some very basic public financial disclosure things are not happening. And that is a major concern whenever you move away from a state model to something that's more a private LLC model.
There, to the point of the pushback, has been some interesting commentary from people that I wouldn't necessarily suspect to be doing the truth to power thing in the state of Utah. Jason Chaffetz, the former congressman who's now a Fox News guy, says he is still looking for someone to explain how the University of Utah sold equity in an entity owned by the people of Utah. Taxpayers own it. Now someone else owns it. I think Utah would probably say that they didn't sell the Utah Athletic Department, that they just created a new thing to put the money that goes to the Utah Athletic Department into, and that would be a workaround that would suffice legally. But I have been wondering, I was just talking about what I see as maybe a little bit of fake populism in this Senate bill. Why would you not get a little bit up in arms about this if you're a taxpayer in one of these states and you're like, this is a crown jewel of the state and it is being privatized?
Well, part of it is not everybody in Utah feels that way.
I can tell you a decent amount of people who don't feel that way.
Right? Like, so one, this is a politically very conservative state, but there are people in Utah that I kind of would like to get out of the public university game altogether. And there are people that are BYU fans. or that our graduates are supporters of many of the other public institutions in the state. And they're like, great, this makes Utah worse. Who cares? Or they don't look at Utah Athletics television deal as an important public good asset, right? And that's especially true in the State House, where there are more BYU people than Utah people, and where the influence of BYU and specifically the LDS Church carries more sway than.
Is that so, Matt? Like that BYU has more people in power in the state of Utah than Utah? I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely not true in Salt Lake County, which is now become pretty blue, and with
Not BYU blue
itself, but not BYU blue. But within like the state house and state senate and the governor's office, who's a huge BYU fan, like they're not tied or connected to the U as much, and that's been one of the complaints of many Utah fans is lawmakers will sometimes try to rat screw us and like give us the special audit or try to make laws to make us play BYU or are willing to put the thumb on the scale for an entity that isn't the U. So that's one of the issues. Another issue, and I think this isn't specific to Utah, but true generally, sports fans in America are not good at revolting or pushing back.
Alex, how many times do I say it on this show? How many times? Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, right. If this happened in Germany, games would be disrupted. People would be
marching in the streets.
They would be marching in the streets. They don't.
Y'all are not about it.
Yeah,
it's true. When the Pirates gave up 6 runs in the 8th last night, I posted on the internet tribunals for everyone in this bullpen, but I didn't actually show up with weapons to herd them into police vans to take them to trial.
You didn't even show up with French fries. You didn't.
No.
You didn't show up at Iron City. You didn't. You stayed at home.
And in Brazil, Matt, tell them. In Brazil, they show up to Santos training, and the team has to account for what it is they did on a given Saturday.
In Brazil, they would throw people in jail, or kill them, or I mean, like not all of this is good, but like, there would be very deep, meaningful pushback here. Maybe there are places where you could get some actual protests. I do not think anywhere in Utah or anywhere in the Intermountain West, for that matter. I don't want to just pick on the Beehive State. You could do that. You are beginning to see some tepid Republican pushback. Michael Baumgartner, the Republican congressman that represents Pullman, who's basically only in Congress because he cares about college sports, is deeply against this. There are some conservative Utah State House lawmakers who have expressed concern about this, if only because they feel like they weren't sufficiently involved in this process. Is it enough to blow the whole thing up? I doubt it, but I've been wrong before.
Yeah.
But in general, so many things have happened over the last 10 years that I think make the college football fan experience worse. And there has been no resistance other than people like us complaining about it.
I'm academically interested that Utah is doing this and that a single school is doing it, though there have been different investment opportunities on offer for other schools for conferences. I'm glad that it's starting with one school here because they're our guinea pig and we will get to watch how this goes. And I understand, and this is another thing that we've talked about together before, that people for very good reasons just get the pitchforks out about the words private equity. They might well be right to do that, but I'm glad that we get to watch it with Utah and see how well or terribly it goes. And I bet that there's a lot of athletic directors, university presidents who are not upset that Utah is going first and that we would just get to watch. How does that go? And if it fails for them, at least they'll always sell out that stadium. At least you can't kill Utah football.
They'll sell out the football stadium. They're not selling out the Huntsman Center right now, which for basketball. And that's to me, like that's the most interesting part of this deal, because you have a real estate asset that either needs to be moved or significantly renovated or changed. And that might be the most significant thing that private capital could either help with or completely ruin. You're right. The football team needs to be bad for a while before they stop selling out that place. But this used to be a basketball school. Now it's not a basketball school anymore. Things change.
Andrew Bogut,
Andre Miller.
I can't name a third Utah basketball player.
Keith Van Horn.
Real matching of wits right there.
Sure. That's it. That's the end. That's the end of
This
it.
concludes remembering of Utah guys. Remember, listeners, I'm from Ohio.
Richard, you're not really a hat guy, right?
No. However, I have been intrigued with the concept of the High Crown Tour visor during the obvious leisure activity that both of us participate in. I'm considering it. We'll report back.
Interesting.
But no, not a hat guy.
I am considering a new hat, a new collection of hats that is coming out right now that in fact has already been released into the world by our partners at Home Field. This is the Game Day Patch Truckers. One thing that I like about hats is that they cover my eyes and they give me a bit of sun protection on my face during the gorgeous summer months. But one thing I don't love about hats is the way that they make the back of my head hot. I have thicker hair and you put a really harsh fabric over it, I get a little bit hot. The new Nokian patch truckers, the Nokian patch, you know what? We're leaving it in. The new Home Field patch truckers, unless our tire sponsor wants to get into the hat game as well, would be unlikely, but you never know. Companies can have multiple lines of business. The new Home Field Game Day patch truckers have these big mesh backs that allow you to get a little bit of breathability, a little bit of air, which I'm intending to really utilize over the course of this summer, especially when I'm playing golf, but also just when I'm walking around. There are dozens of schools already in the collection. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Check them out. Don't just protect your eyes, but keep your head cool. Why have a hot head when you're walking around in the summer? Thanks very much to Home Field for their support of this program. Matt, you said you're from Ohio. You have a lot of history in the state of Utah. We're making this the real Matt Brown Sports Business Hour. The next story that we're going to talk about deals with Brazil. Ancestral homeland of Matt Brown's, for those not familiar. There was to be a game there in week 0 this year between NC State and Virginia. They were going to take the show to Rio de Janeiro, but they are not doing that. At the end of the day, the ACC announced in the middle of this week, basically the top of June, that after, quote, extensive review with operational partners and international stakeholders, the plan is off. They are moving this game to Charlottesville, and people's imaginations have been running wild about why this long-planned game did not happen. You, Matt, via the Extra Point Document Library, an essential resource that we use all the time ourselves, have that contract for that game. What can you tell us about why this game is not happening? And as bonus points, what you think it suggests about the business of putting on college football games internationally?
Yeah, there's a couple of different dynamics at play. And it's funny. So this was announced initially, I want to say like 3 days before the ACC football championship game.
Yeah, it was in December.
Right. And I remember I was super excited when I heard about it. I called UVA and they're like, we can't talk about this right now. We're playing Duke. Call us afterwards. And the ACC.
Yeah, we're Virginia and we're in the ACC football championship game. We're surprised too.
Yeah, exactly. I began to get a little concerned after the end of the college football season when I would reach out to the ACC, where I normally have a very good press relationship, and NC State and UVA, the Brazilian local government, and this other agency that the Athletes Advantage is putting this on, when they didn't want to go on the record and do an interview, or they wouldn't return my phone calls. I'm like, that's weird. Not because I'm the most famous reporter in the world, but I think, the only Brazilian American who's a national college football writer. And I think the only person who's very enthusiastically pro this idea. And I began to hear whispers pretty early on that like, I don't think this thing's going to happen. And you could kind of tell there wasn't a lot of American promotion of this, especially, in the late spring. The schools didn't really want to talk about it. Few dynamics at play. One, this was not on track to be commercially successful. Heard from a lot of people in Brazil associated with Brazilian sports groups, Brazilian fan communities promoting American football, and even the Rio's like sports authority equivalent, saying like local demand had been terrible because this was priced super expensive. This was essentially like the same tickets priced locally to go see the Eagles, or go see the NFL teams.
It also should be noted that, like, first of all, for people that kind of like aren't aware, like Brazil is like one of the next hotbeds for American football internationally.
There's a ton of NFL fans there.
Yeah. It's Brazil, Germany, Nigeria. There are a couple others, but in any event, Brazil's pretty big. That is why the NFL is playing games there, because the NFL wants to get in on that. To me, I find the exporting of college football, I don't want to say weird because like whatever, capitalism. But like the NFL scales. Like college football to me internationally, college football does not scale because the ties that bind to college football, at least theoretically or classically, are much more community based. Whereas you can be an Eagles fan wherever because they're the Philadelphia Eagles, for God's sakes. But I just, to me, it's always weird when we talk about this going to Brazil or them going to Mexico or even the Ireland game beyond like Notre Dame and Boston College, which at least that I understood.
I understand where you're coming from, and I've heard this from a lot of other American fans. I think I would respectfully disagree a little bit on one small thing. Part of you're right. The reason that makes college football and college basketball and college sports so exciting for so many of us is because of that regional and intimate personal connection.
And if you're going to send anybody, send Texas.
Right, I'll get to that in a second. But there's also these ties between religion and class and geography, right? To be a Vanderbilt fan in public says something about you. I'm going to assume that you are not a Pell Grant kid if you're walking around with Vanderbilt stuff everywhere, right? If I see you in a BYU shirt, we're going to assume some things about you. Same thing for Notre Dame. And that dynamic that we're talking about here does not exist elsewhere in American professional sports. It does exist in Western European soccer. And it exists in South American soccer and other sports. That is how Brazilians decide which soccer team they're going to root for, and what a lot of people in across the world pick those teams. I think if you already have people that are interested in the sport in general, and you're able to sell that regionalism and that provincialism and those kind of ties, and now you get to pick a college football team based on the kind of person you are. Not just who's the one team that gets on television, and the fan culture and the parties and the barbecue and the weirdos, way more in college than NFL. I look at that and think somebody who is a fan of Corinthians or Santos will get that. The big issue, though, if you're in Brazil, you can watch the NFL on TV. Like whether it's on ESPN4, whether it's on Globo, whether it's on DSN, like you can go to a bar or if you have it's not difficult on the internet to get access to most NFL games. You can't watch college football unless you have a VPN. It's not on TV anywhere. And if you're in South America, if you're traveling, right? I think Alex, you've experienced this. You can't just pull up your own personal ESPN Plus account because it's regional.
Dude, I had to do some legally questionable stuff with location spoofing to do a hurry up last year when we had a wedding that we attended in Colombia.
Yeah.
It was I was really proud of myself when I managed to get my command center set up in a hotel room. It was an ordeal, and if I did not have a professional reason to do it, I would not have done it.
I have hurried up from Mexico, and that was similarly, Mexico City was a little bit easier, but like that, thank God Clemson and Georgia were the big ones that day, and I think Miami and Florida played that day too.
Yeah, I committed a few international felonies to watch Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue.
He doesn't mean that in any actionable way. Interpol.
No, relax, right?
And when I say Columbia, you don't know what I might have meant Columbia, Maryland. If any authorities there
Columbia, South Carolina, you don't know.
Could have been all kinds of things.
If you want to talk to me about this more, my email address is mattbrown@newyorktimes.com. But so like I think that's part of the problem then, because now if you're trying to sell an inferior football or not nominally inferior football product at NFL prices to people that don't have any idea who these brands are, have never watched them, have no connection to them, and charge the same amount of money, it's not going to work. The other major problem here is with those two schools specifically. This gets to
I was going to ask you about this. Matt, let me ask you this question, because you were basically saying with certain college football teams, they're a signal. Like, totally makes a lot of sense. Like, I could imagine Notre Dame going to a place where there's a lot of Catholics and it would just work because they're Notre Dame. But what is someone in Rio, in Brazil, supposed to take away from NC State?
The most 75 team imaginable, yeah.
Well, they love Dave Doran. They're desperate for Dave.
They love Cheerwine? Like, no, they don't. I don't know. And here's the other thing too, right? Because you need a mix of, you got to sell this to people in Rio. A place that, to my understanding, does not have as many American expats as other parts. Like, this game should have been in São Paulo for lots of other reasons, not just because that's where my family is and it's easier for me to get to. But you have difficulty selling it there. Here's the thing: there's over 1 million Brazilians the Brazilian Americans or Brazilian nationals that live in the United States. It's not we're not as plentiful as Mexicans or Salvadorians or Guatemalans, but there's a decent number of us. But we tend to be concentrated in a few individual places. Central North Carolina is not one of those places. I looked this up. There's like 10,000 Brazilians in the entire state, and most of them are around Charlotte. Virginia, there's even fewer, and they're not anywhere near Charlottesville. They're like State Department people in Nova. So it's going to be difficult to convince a bunch of white guys in Cary who have no connection to this country whatsoever and are only kind of fans of this team to go. If you brought UCF, you would be able to sell 25,000 tickets because so many Brazilians live in Orlando. And they would look at this and think, this is an excuse for me to go home, visit some family, and go support the local team. If you put Miami, if you put Boston College, maybe even UMass, you would sell more tickets than these teams. If you're going to do it, you can't pick two teams that are close together, where you're used to seeing them play all the time anyway in America, and move them 6,000 miles away when there's no connection to that country whatsoever. That won't work.
You know, I am actually pleasantly surprised, not that it matters anymore, that you could fly from Raleigh to Rio with just one layover for $683, even now with the price of jet fuel.
That's pretty
not
good.
as bad as I would have thought, actually.
Every time
not as bad as I would have thought.
Well, it's also winter in Brazil, so this is not the peak tourist season. But every time I've gone, I've had to pay a lot more.
Air travel.
TLDR, I think this could work. I would like it to happen. I don't think an international game is something that any college program should ever do more than like once a decade. If you do this too much, it really does diminish what makes the game great. It becomes too big of a cost burden on your fans. It should be very much a once in a while, sometimes food. But there's a lot of fans that would, I think, learn to really love this product and be a great cross-cultural trip, right? Like,
yeah.
Look, man, I know I'm biased. Our people have a lot in common, Americans and Brazilians. We love organized competitive sports. Check. We love
beef.
We love barbecue. We love music and partying. And we have some maybe more troubling things in common that we don't have to talk about here, like violence. But these fan cultures are transferable. They're translatable. People, we'd all get along and have a great time. It just can't be these two teams and on such short notice. That's kind of the last other thing that I do believe is part of this. Everyone's got to get a passport and a visa to get into Brazil. It didn't used to be that way. Now that Trump is in charge and is worried about Latino people, he's made it harder for Brazilians to get here. So Brazil did the same thing. And there's so many beautiful things about the Brazilian state, and an efficient bureaucracy is not one of them in my experience. It takes a while to get all of those things. And Rio is a wonderful, beautiful city in many ways. It has a higher degree of difficulty for American travelers than, say, Dublin. There's security concerns that aren't going to be the same as they are in some other Western European cities. It's a hard trip to pull off. You can't do it in under a year. You definitely can't do it in under a year with a company that's never done it before.
Also, none of us know Portuguese,
Dude,
Portuguese
is hard.
It's hard. I cannot do it.
I went to Portugal.
I'm reasonable in Spanish. I don't want to overstate it on a podcast and then embarrass myself if you ever meet me in person. But I think a lot of Americans in Spanish can get around. Portuguese is harder. Tough language.
I think the challenge, like it's linguistically pretty similar to Spanish, but you don't hear it as often here, right? Like part of the reason that my Portuguese is terrible is because outside of my immediate blood relatives, where am I going to hear it? Like in Chicago, there aren't very many other Brazilians. You live in an urban city in the United States, whether that's in LA or New York or Chicago or anywhere else, you're going to be exposed to Spanish. You'll hear Spanish on the radio. You'll see Spanish ads on billboards. People will be speaking it. If you don't live in New York, Boston, Orlando, Miami, or maybe a little bit of northern of the DC burbs, you'll never hear it. So you won't pick it up as much. And you go to Portugal and you start speaking like a Brazilian, they're going to make fun of you because it does different Portuguese.
It does feel like college football as an international sport, or at least as a sport that plays international games, has gone backwards in my lifetime, which I think is unusual. I mean, there was a game played for a couple of decades, most years in Tokyo. Barry Sanders played in it one year and had one of his great vintage Oklahoma State performances.
There's a lot of football fans in Japan. There was going to be a game. There was actually good. I think I've said it on here. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for breaking or mentioning this again. There was going to be a game in Tokyo, as I understand it, between Hawaii and Stanford. The contract was signed and it was broken because Stanford joined the ACC. And they're like, guys, we're already traveling across the world 6 other times. We were not able to do this trip at the same time. And then Hawaii hasn't been able to find another partner. But if they could, they'd play there in a year.
Yeah. It's a shame. Big 12 Mexico has not happened. I'm kind of giving up that will ever happen. I feel like I got duped for talking about that when it was announced. Matt's making the $ figure with his fingers there.
Yeah.
I wish that it would work because I think I didn't do study abroad when I was in college, but all my friends who did were, it just changed my life. You don't get it. Like it's just so special.
Yeah.
And I think
Barcelona.
and I feel like giving a little bit of that to the football players and the fans is good and should be celebrated. But
yeah,
business is business.
Yeah, I maybe this is for some squishy liberal reasons, right? But like, if you're from West Texas, dude, when are you ever going to go to Brazil on your own volition? It's unlikely that you will. Being able to do a trip like this or do it, Harbaugh used to do with the Michigan football players, take them to meet the Pope or do some kind of international trips. I think those are great. A lot of college basketball coaches would tell you that like the 1 or 2 that they do every 4 years is meaningful for team building, and helping people have cultural experiences. And I don't know about you guys, I love football. I think football is awesome. I love sharing it with other people. Lots of other people and in cultures all over the world love it too. And I think it's great to share it, just like I think it's great for us to be exposed to the sports that everywhere else in the world plays. You have to make the math and logistics work. And if you're going to bring a travel party of 600 people and all of that equipment, you can't half-ass it. And I think what we're learning here is that it's more expensive and more difficult than maybe some folks thought 8 months ago.
Matt, the fourth quarter of this episode, the last thing we'll talk about, a topic that might become dated pretty soon because things are still developing here, but let's just check in about it. Brendan Sorsby still trying to get on the field for Texas Tech this year, and Texas Tech trying to help him do it. The recent developments here are the NCAA rejecting Texas Tech's plea to reinstate Brendan Sorsby, Texas Tech appealing that, proposing a 2-game suspension. Okay, fellas. A temporary injunction hearing was June 1st in Lubbock, where the Sorsby side was trying to get an injunction, trying to get the NCAA's enforcement basically held up here so that he could for now come back.
Alex, real cherry on top of that one. Original judge in that case recused himself. He happened to be, I believe, a double Red Raider.
Yeah.
Grad. Now, obviously, that does not guarantee you anything.
No,
Charles
it doesn't
Bediako
guarantee it at all.
Charles Bediako had had 2 tied judges, I think.
Harbaugh
and it didn't
had
work.
a Michigan judge when the Big Ten suspended him, and that didn't help him.
It does not guarantee you anything, but it is really funny.
Yes, it is like a picture of him with the Red Raider. Right?
Yeah.
Right? And then this is the hard thing about college sports litigation, and part of the reason to go full circle why the major conferences in the NCAA have wanted congressional intervention for some of these things. Because if you're gonna have an eligibility lawsuit or something in Mississippi, brother, almost all the judges went to Ole Miss. There's not that many law schools. If you have something in Alabama, that's I think in Alabama there's like 2. In some states there's only 1. Getting around home cooking is going to be very, very hard. The new judge, as I understand it, is not a Texas Tech grad at all. But we'll see. I do not have especially insightful legal analysis to project how this will go. Only that I hope that college sports are able to enforce some kind of rule that says you can't bet on your own team.
This is what I wanted to talk about. I agree. I'm not going to predict, though I've said before and maintain that I am really skeptical that this tack from Sorsby is going to work. I'll believe it when I see it. I think some people have negatively polarized themselves so that they're just expecting, either wanting or expecting that the NCAA is going to lose any case. Because what organization has face planted in court more often in more high profile ways in sports over the last decade than the NCAA? I don't know how to tell you, if you don't already get it, that this is not the same as an amateurism lawsuit. I'll just say that it's just not the same. This is not a college sports thing. This is a sports thing. And I find the people who are getting caught in sort of this hysterical, anything the NCAA tries to do is automatically bad because they're the NCAA stance, are at risk of looking pretty dumb when this thing is resolved in the next couple of weeks or months.
Days, actually, to be honest with you. It's the 4th.
Yeah.
I think there's an expectation from one side that it could be done within a matter of days. Some of that's a wishful thinking, but I do think it probably gets resolved by the end of June because supplemental draft, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, maybe I am underselling the complexity of it, but I find this to be, as I think Alex does, and I think you too, Matt, pretty open and shut.
There's more coming out as we go about more bets on his team, which, by the way, would have made him ineligible each of the last 3 seasons during which he made plenty of money. He already got away with it for a very long time. Everyone feels terrible for him. He's clearly an addict. It's awful. I just don't know what we're doing here still, but this is continuing. He has a good lawyer, Jeff Kessler, who was the House settlement lawyer.
Yeah, pretty much
But
the best lawyer money could buy on such things.
Even with this great lawyer who knows more about the law than we do, they're in court in Lubbock, and they're arguing that this should be treated like this Indiana volleyball assistant coach who what he did was bet on other sports at his school. And so he got a suspension for 30% of his season, which is the NCAA's policy, which is what is written down. And they are trying to argue that trying to suspend Sorsby for doing a different and worse thing would be out of line with the way they've treated cases like this guy's, which no, it wouldn't. It's just, I don't know. Sometimes you don't have a winning argument in the world, and I do not think they have a winning argument here. But we will see. We will see. This is not a legal prediction podcast.
Well, sometimes it is.
Yeah, from time to time. Where could we possibly go wrong? But yeah, this just continues, by the way, the summer of Texas Tech. We already talked about Cody Campbell throwing his weight around nationally. You have this kind of shambolic attempt to get the quarterback on the field this year.
Oh, where do we stand on the we'd like to schedule Texas for a 2026
Wrestling
season
move.
opener? Like, okay. Now, what I do think is that it would be neat if they got a home and home on the books. It does actually look like Texas Tech is shopping for a home and home for 27 and 28. That is actually pretty significant. It sounds like they've talked to Notre Dame and some other.
I was about to say, watch Notre Dame.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Do that. Have a ball. You're not playing Texas week 1. You know you're not playing Texas week 1.
But also, my favorite part of it is Joey McGuire saying it won't be Texas because they're scared. Like, Texas in week 2 is playing at Texas. Or excuse me, Ohio State is playing at Ohio State in week 2 is playing at Texas. That's the game. I don't want to like poo-poo shaming Texas into playing Texas Tech. I think they should have to play everybody who they left behind in the Big 12. Make them go on the road like 12 years in a row. Perfect. Great. But the wrestling PR attempts that Texas Tech has been doing around
to do this in June are
pretty
good
funny.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah, listen, I understand we all need things to talk about. I just look at these stories and recognize they're not for me, right? We had the summer of North Carolina last year.
God.
We have somebody every year that decides that they want to cut wrestling promos. Sark was doing this, it kind of brought this on himself a little bit here by randomly trying to play the academic card, or just give me a fucking break, man. It's weird to see somebody talk a lot of shit that hasn't won enough to justify talking a lot of shit.
By the way, I do think this is going to be the summer of Sark. I think they are rearing back to blow about this team, to be honest with you. SEC Media Day is coming up next month. I think they are going to be chesty about this team and its chances this season. And all right,
we'll find out pretty soon.
And I tend to lean optimistic on that, but
sure.
All right.
I don't think that's irrational. I would just prefer the wrestling shit talking come from people who have won more, right? Like, I think it'd be great. It'd be very funny if like Signetti was doing this, but he's never going to do it. But that's not the world we live in. If other people love that, that's great. It's not for me.
Signetti has a different way of telling you he doesn't respect the team. He did this with Illinois last year. his favorite thing is just to say something like, we know this team is going to be our toughest opponent, much tougher than that other shit team. That's his favorite way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll do that during the season, and he'll do it in kind of a more sly way, and that's fine. And if other people get joy and anger and engagement and really into this, great. That's not my beat anymore. And I just look at it and go, okay, that's for other people. That's fine.
This is Matt Brown, who has been with us on this episode. This has been the Extra Points Split Zone Duo College Sports Business Hour. We've been doing it every month all off season, and we still got a month or two to go before toe is meeting leather. You can read Matt all the time by going to extrapointsmb.com. You should subscribe to his newsletter. You can start out for free, get a couple of those a week. They are an essential part of the week. If you work in college sports, you should probably have access to the Extra Points library. And while we're calling things out, you could watch this episode on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces talking about it. We have a new YouTube channel that is just for episodes of the podcast. If you just search Split Zone Duo Podcasts on YouTube, or we'll put it in the show notes so you can click on it. Video podcasts there. I'm not really convinced they're the future, but enough people have told us that they like to watch podcasts that, we're giving in.
Look, because this is a video podcast, I put on a shirt with buttons today. Do you know how hard that is to do? Because home field doesn't want to make those. Like, I did that for you guys.
That's so true. It's true. We all dressed up for this one. Thank you very much, Matt Brown. Thank you to everyone who listened to the show. The offseason rolls on. Football pretty soon.